Hey guys, TKC here with another segment of Kaijudo News. This week, well, let's just say a lot of cards have been previewed this week. So, the set's kind of coming out really soon. Shattered Alliances is coming out in, less than 2 weeks. And so since it's so close, spoilers are just shooting left and right from a bunch of different places, like usual. So this episode will strictly talk about those 11 new cards that have came out ever since my last episode. So let's start off with the biggest spoiler of them all, and that is the Light Monarch spoiled at Bobby Break's celebration event that was held in Kansas, which is the store that he qualified at to actually make it to the Kaijudo Championship and then eventually win. So Eternal Haven looks something like this. Yes, it is a monster. This is a ridiculous card. It is level 10, 15,500 power, has blocker, triple breaker just like the other Monarchs. It has blockade, which is pretty much the main awesome effect that happens when it comes into play and when it attacks, which is pretty cool. You get to draw a card and then play any blocker from your hand that is level 9 or less and summon it straight to the battle zone, which is insane. Then, just to make things worse, you can't Comet Missile this card because it has Aurora Armor, which is basically untargetable by abilities or spells. And of course, since it's a Monarch, it powers up all light creatures on the field by 4,000 except the Haven itself. So, a lot of ideas have, shot up because of this card. Orion is going to be a lot more playable now because you could summon Haven off of Orion's effect. Panopter is going to be pretty cool as well because then you can make a much better Panopter-centric deck, which actually Ryan Miller, who was at the event, the celebration event, he actually brought a Light Water Dark, a bit of nature Panopter deck that used Eternal Haven, Panopter, Twilight Archon, which combos insanely well with this card, and a bunch of blockers all over the place. A lot of people are speculating that Crimson Wyvern is going to be really useful since Crimson Wyvern banishes all enemy blockers and doesn't target. So you can use the Wyvern to counter these Haven-centric decks and banish all blockers without worrying about the Aurora Armor ability. It seems kind of sketchy though, because Wyvern is very situational and is kind of only good against those kind of decks, but I guess we'll see how it pans out. It could easily see place as a tech choice in a Water Dark Fire control deck. So now with the two Monarchs finally fully spoiled, we can move on to the other cards in this set, and that are the other super rares, the other very rares, and some rares. We haven't even seen any commons, we haven't seen any uncommons, and we haven't seen any spells besides Calamity Bell, which is going to be in the competitive deck, and it will also be in the Shattered Alliance set. So let's move on to another super rare that has been spoiled, and that card is Cordia, the Soul Tyrant, the Darkness Nature super rare. It is a Shadow Champion Earthstrike Dragon, level 9, 9,000 power. Of course, it enters the battle zone tapped. Double Breaker, Essence Siphon. When this creature enters the battle zone, put all creatures from your discard pile into your mana zone tapped, which is pretty crazy if you fuel your discard pile with a bunch of creatures, because then you just, boom, you get a bunch of mana. But it enters tapped, so be very careful of that. You're not going to get it untapped and then be able to play something off that mana. But next turn, you can attack with this card and use a Soul Shackle ability that allows you to summon any level 6 or less creature in your mana zone for free into the battle zone. I think the funniest thing with this card that you can do is play Kurgar of the Hordes first, then play Cordia with a bunch of creatures in your discard pile, and because you're putting many cards from your discard pile into your mana zone, you trigger Kurgar's effect many times. So you could flip the top card of your deck like 5-6 times, then bam, swarm the field with a bunch of creatures if your deck does have a lot of creatures in it. And the third of the 3 supers that were spoiled this week is Heretic Prince Varaka. It is a Cyberlord Armored Dragon, as if we don't have enough of those. It is a double breaker, has fast attack, and it has Heat Wave and Overheat. Heat Wave makes all of your other creatures have fast attack, so this is just like Hyperspeed Dragon and Steam Tank Cryon, and it has Overheat, which basically turns one of your creatures into a Helaflame the Assaulter at the end of the turn. I don't even know where to start with this card because you could do so many different things with this. First of all, just this card alone has fast attack, so this easily sees place in some sort of Saber Bolt list, like a Aqua Saber Bolt that uses Water, Fire, Nature, or even in control decks like Water Dark Fire, this has a place as well. Just being able to have fast attack itself and then everything else also has fast attack is pretty incredible. And then being able to save one of your creatures from getting banished by Shield Blast or something at the end of the turn is pretty awesome. You bring it back to your hand and they can't deal with it unless they discard it from your hand. If you use Heal of Flame and this card in your deck, things get really silly because then you could pretty much use Heretic's effect on the Heal of Flame. That way you don't have to bounce back 2 creatures. and you can just keep on reusing the Heal of Flame and then reusing Heretic's effect on the Heal of Flame, and it's just madness. Playing Andromeda over and over again with this, so you basically play Andromeda, it has fast attack, you could attack with it if you want, but you probably don't want to, and then at the end of the turn you bring back Andromeda, and then you play it again next turn, and bam, you have like infinite shields. Or another one that I think I like a lot more is Squillless Scourge, because that essentially turns it into an infinite lock almost. You pretty much play Squillless, both discard your hands, awesome, and then at the end of the turn you bring back Squillless to your hand, and well, they draw a card and they can't do anything, and it's your turn, you play Squillless again, and it's so on and so on and so on. So just with those three supers, lots and lots of possibilities. But we also have very rares to talk about next, so we're going to go straight to those, and let's go to another Firewater card, and that is Kha'Zix the Volatile. It is a Riptide champion and Blaze champion, which is awesome. Those are two new races that this set has brought to the table. So now we're not going to have just Shadow Champion and just Skyforce champions, we're also going to have champions for the other three civilizations, and now we know that Water is Riptide and Fire is Blaze. Who knows what nature is going to be, but we'll see when that happens. Now, this Kha'Zix card's level 6, 6,000, double breaker, like usual. I think everything has something breaker at this point. Superheated Steam. Whenever you draw a card, which I believe includes the start of your turn, this creature gets powerful attack plus 2,000 until the end of the turn. And remember, powerful attack stacks, so you could keep on drawing cards, and for each card you draw, it will get 2,000 more power when it attacks only. And then it also has Massive, which is when this creature has power 12,000 or more, it has triple breaker. So if you go in for shields and you've drawn 3 cards, well, good job. You are going to be breaking 3 shields. Some funny combos include King Tritonus with this, which is pretty funny because it essentially attacks for 22,000 power and gets triple breaker, obviously, because it goes like 10,000 over the required amount. Not so sure how good Kha'Zix is going to be, but who knows, maybe something crazy will happen and maybe a deck will actually work with this card. Moving on to the next very rare, and that is Obsidian Death. That was spoiled today on the website. I believe 5 cards were spoiled on the website today, which is pretty insane amounts. Usually 1 or 2, but today we got 5. So Obsidian Death is pretty neat. It's a level 6, 6,000 power creature that has double breaker. Do you see a pattern? Yes. If it's level 6, it's probably double breaker. If it's 6,000 power, it's probably double breaker. And then it also has Mulch. Whenever another creature is banished, you may put the top card of your deck into your mana zone. So this is another card that kind of fits into a Darkness Nature based control deck. Being able to have a double breaker, which is really good in control decks because you want more finishers. The thing that's awesome about the Mulch ability is that it's not just their creatures that get banished, it's also yours. So very often Obsidian Death's effect will happen and you will get ramp, which is really cool. So you can have a finisher that ramps you up closer to your awesome finishing move, like Twilight Archon or Andromeda the Citadel or Eternal Haven or stuff like that. So Obsidian Death is another one of those cards that will fit pretty well in control decks. Alright, moving on to the rares. There's 6 rares that have been spoiled. Pretty awesome stuff. They're all really cool. And let's start with the 2 that were previewed on, I believe, the official Kaijudo Facebook group. And the first one is Cyber Scamp. Now, here's another reason why people will want to use rush decks, the really aggressive rush decks, and this is pretty much the main reason why you want to bring out your Emperor Neurons again, because Cyber Scamp is absolutely nuts. It's a level 2, 1,000 power Cyberlord, so it's perfect bait for Neuron, and it also has the ability Ditto. Whenever your opponent casts a spell, you search your deck, you may take another Cyber Scamp from your deck, place it onto the battle zone, and then shuffle your deck. So this is another creature in Kaijudo that allows you to search for a copy of a card and put it onto the battle zone. The other one being Burnclaw the Relentless, which is a Drakon Evo that lets you get a Branka, which is another, Drakon bait card that you could evolve on top of. So this is pretty much very similar to that, except the effect that, could easily happen. Just your opponent casting a spell, bam, you get another Cyber Scamp, you swarm your field, and you pretty much assure that you'll get that Emperor Neuron as soon as possible. So this is going to be super awesome in a lot of different decks. Blurple is going to be really cool now because now it has another level 2 bait for Neuron, which is really good. It makes that turn 3 Neuron play a little bit more consistent. I know there was Cyber Grid Bandit before, but now with this card it kind of makes your opponent think a bit, because if they play a spell, well, uh-oh, there's another creature on the field that's going to break a shield or something, or another creature that's going to turn to an Emperor Neuron or an Axon or a Dendrite. So very, very awesome card. I easily see this being a very playable card in Rush decks and Blurple decks. Speaking of Blurple, here's another card that would fit pretty well in there. Cursed Eye Black Feather. Now this is pretty awesome. This Black Feather is pretty much very, very similar to the original Black Feather of Shadow Abyss back in the Dojo edition. Cursed Eye Black Feather also triggers whenever something happens and you draw a card. And in this case, instead of a creature getting banished on your opponent's side of the field, it's actually if your opponent gets any card discarded, you draw a card. And once again, like Kurigar, this affects stacks. So if you play a card like Skull Shatter or School of Scourge that discards your opponent's entire hand, well, you're drawing a lot of cards. So this card effectively cancels the negative side of School of Scourge because, well, you're going to discard your hand, but you're going to basically replace that with a whole new set of cards. So this is just another card that could fit into many, many different decks, and you want to be sure that you want to be playing a lot of awesome discard effects so that every time you have this out on the field, you're going to be drawing a lot of cards. Now, the next 4 cards have all been previewed on the site today, which is absolutely incredible. Let's start with the one that I personally like the most, and that is the new Enforcer Evolution. Yes, another Enforcer Evolution, and that is Blinder Beetle Prime. Now, this card is pretty incredible as well. So this is quite an obvious buff to the Mono Light Rush deck that did very well at the championships, but I can also see this card in a lot more other decks. So Blinder Beetle Prime is a level 5, 6,000 power double breaker Enforcer Evo, and has Pulse Wave. Whenever this creature enters the battle zone, and whenever it attacks, you tap target enemy creature. Basically, the first turn you play this, you could effectively tap 2 creatures on your opponent's side of the field and get rid of them. I don't see this just in a Rush deck. I can honestly see this in a control deck as well. It's kind of like a mini Starspark Blast in a creature, and because it's a creature with a pretty big body, you could actually get rid of things on the field. Don't get me wrong, I don't think this will replace Lyra the Blazing Sun because that card is pretty amazing in itself, but I think this could honestly see some slots in those control decks. You know, the same old Light, Water, Darkness control decks that have been, you know, doing so well consistently for the past few formats ever since Dragon Strike came out. Next card that's pretty cool and has a pretty awesome effect that has never been in Kaijudo. This is Onslaught Trooper, which is a Stomper, a level 5 4000 Stomper. It has Reload. Whenever this creature becomes tapped, for the first time each turn, you untap it. So it basically protects itself against tap on your opponent's turn, and you could attack twice with it on your turn, because you attack once, it gets tapped, and then you untap. Some funny combos with this. You could do some pretty silly Starseed shenanigans. You know, you have Starseed turn 4, this card turn 5, and then any spell, boom, it turns into a 6,000 power double breaker that can attack twice, so you can break 4 shields with just this card if it manages to dodge Shield Blast. If you don't want to use Starseed Squadron, you could also use a card like Magma Madness to give it double breaker and attack twice, so bam, 4 shields once again. And now the next 2 cards are very interesting. These are both multi-civilization cards, and these cards are basically the battle mages of this set. Gavin made a whole article talking about that, and I can leave it in the description to see his whole explanation on how the battle mages in this set came to be. But basically, they wanted the allied civilizations from the last set to be more combat-oriented, whereas these battle mages want to be awesome and they want to have enter the battlefield kind of effects. So let's start with this first one, for example. We have Zoltara the Mercenary, a level 6, 3000 power, Enforcer and Spectre. It has 2 abilities because it's a battle mage. Hold the Line and Void Vapor. Hold the Line makes all of your creatures get blocker until the start of your next turn. And then its second ability is Void Vapor. When it enters the battle zone, you get to discard a card out of your opponent's hand, but this time it's not random like Veilstalker. So as you can see here, this battle mage is quite different because it's level 6, which is 1 level higher. And because they made this just a little bit more expensive, it allows these cards to have enter the battlefield effects, which are really cool. Now the second battle mage they showed off is the Firewater one, which is Marblurpa the Weaponsmith. Level 6, 3000 once again. It has Ingenuity and Flame Jet. Ingenuity, when this creature enters the battle zone, you may draw a card. Awesome. And Flame Jet, when this creature enters the battle zone, you banish target enemy creature that has power 2000 or less. Also awesome. So right off the bat, that's 4 civilizations down. We pretty much know 4 of the battle mage effects, and we can pretty much assume that these effects are going to match up with the other battle mages and stuff like that, just like the last set. So the only thing we're missing is Nature, and I think the pretty obvious enter the battlefield effect for Nature is going to be Ramp. The top card of your deck goes into your mana zone. I'm pretty sure it's going to be that. I think everyone could agree there. If not, then I honestly don't know what Nature is going to be able to do, but I guess we'll have to see. Alright guys, so that is all. That's all of the 11 cards that were pretty much spoiled ever since the last episode I filmed for Kaijudo news. Before I go, out of all the cards I talked about today, which one is your favorite and why? Me personally, I really like the Blinder Beetle. I don't know, I just think it's really awesome. I also really like Eternal Haven, although it's a light monarch. It's pretty insane. I really love light myself, so I could easily see myself making decks around Eternal Haven or even the Blinder Beetle Prime. I'm really excited for this set overall, and I'm pretty sure you guys are as well. Alright guys, so see you next week for another episode of Kaijudo News. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more cards spoiled and a lot of other awesome news out there. Maybe the location of the Winter Champs, which has still not been spoiled yet, but maybe we'll find out eventually, and a bunch of other stuff. So guys, this is TKC, the Kaijudo channel, signing off. Hope you had a nice day guys, and see you later.